Hello and welcome to the demo video for the Consultancy hourly rate calculator. It does a little bit more than calculate the hourly rate, but I'll show you how all the different tabs work. This is specifically designed with architects in mind, but any kind of consultancy-based firm where you're essentially charging out people per hour, this will work for you. So I'll show you how it all works. There's quite a bit to it. It's actually a very simple spreadsheet to use, but there's a lot going on around the peripherals that you can kind of change and tweak and edit. There's a lot of stuff that's important and there's a lot of stuff that's completely optional. So I'll go through it with you and hopefully it all makes sense. These first four tables at the top here, those are all just drop-down list options. So when we get onto the personnel rates, you'll see that there's a pension and NI percentage. There's working weeks per year, there's hours per week, and there's a productivity percentage. I'll explain what all of those are, but these are just the default options. So you can come in here, you can use all 5 of them, you can use 1 of them, you can use 3 of them, just leave them blank if you don't need them. You don't have to use them. You can put them, you can even overwrite all of them later on anyway. So these aren't important. You can change them at any stage. They're just there for your convenience so that you can have them in a drop-down list. The annual forecast turnover, this is important because this works out what percentage your overheads are so that it can work out what kind of profit you need to add on in order to accomplish what kind of margin you need to add on in order to accomplish the profit that you actually want to make. So this you want to keep up to date. I mean, even if you came in here and updated it every day, which I don't think anyone would, but it can be as accurate as you want it to be. Just keep putting it in your annual forecasted turnover, whether that be what you're currently making, what you think you're going to make, what you want to make, what you've made before. That's up to you. Just try and keep that as accurate as possible. That'll keep your other numbers accurate. Then there are 10 stages that I've broken each project down into 10 stages. So the architects, I believe, use from stage 0 through. So I've gone from 0 through to stage 9. If you don't want to use stage 9, for example, you can come here, stage 9, and select the cross, and then it says it doesn't use it. So these are the default names, but these are the names that you're actually going to see above your columns. So for example, if I wanted to change stage 0 to maybe initial, for example, then you can see it changes the name. So you can play around with these 2 red columns. These are the defaults that if it's blank, that's what it'll use. But this column here, that shows you what it's actually going to say at the end of the day. What you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to go and put 2 of the same names. It'll give you little red crosses there, which is a duplicate, which you don't want to do. Other than that, you can play around with that as you see fit. The last 2 things are these 2 settings here. When you send a quote, you mark it off from the spreadsheet, and then it asks you how many days after that, and these are all days, so Monday through to Sunday. How many days afterwards do you want to get an alert to send a follow-up? And when you do send that follow-up, how many days thereafter do you want to get another alert to ask you to do another follow-up? So you might want to do a follow-up maybe 10 days after a quote. I don't know, it depends on you, but you may, once you followed up once, you might only want to follow up again then every 30 days or whatever the case might be. So you can put the 2 figures in there, and that's how long it'll take to flag up for you to do another follow-up. So all these settings on this front page, you can come here and you can update it at any stage. It's not a problem. It doesn't make much of the headers will change your headers. The rest of them are just drop-down options and obviously values that are being used in formulas to do calculations. The first stage of this whole thing is to calculate how much each person is costing you per hour so that you then know what to charge them out at. So I'm going to get to the standard charges in a second, but what you're able to do is you're able to create up to 10 different standard charges. So this spreadsheet will do, this first tab will do is get each person into one of those standard charge categories. So for example, if we had another person and they were earning, for example, 28,000 a year, this is where you've got your national insurance and pension percentage, whatever that percentage might be. And these are your standard options that you put on the intro and setup tab. 20, for example. If that is 21%, you just type in 21, it'll accept it. You can override it. It's not a problem. These are just here for your convenience. So if you put, for example, 20% and you say they work 46 weeks in a year, this person only works, for example, 35 hours a week. then your productivity rating, your productivity rate, what this means is, it doesn't necessarily mean how good the person is, but what it means is how much of the time are they actually spending on client work. Because, for example, if you're charging out £50 an hour, and you need to replenish that through client work, but you're only working 50% of the time, then you actually need to charge £100 an hour to accommodate the 50% of the time when you're working on marketing or the business or networking or whatever else it is, whatever else you're actually doing within the business. So certain people might only have a lower productivity rate. Others, you might actually get them in. You might actually outsource work, for example, and you may say, well, actually, this person only ever does client work, in which case you can put in 100% and then it uses 100% of their time. Now, as you can see, what's happened here is this person's been put into a £20, the £30 category. So there's a difference, hourly difference of £9.13. So the people will automatically be put into whichever standard charge rate is above their hourly rate. It'll never take a loss on the sheet unless you tell it to. What you might do in this case is you may actually come here and go, oh, hold on, this person's so close to 20. Let's put them in as a £20 an hour charge out rate, even though we're losing 87p an hour, because we're making that up on other people. And you can override it and say, no, there must be in this charge rate. And then it'll give you a negative. The only other time it will give you a negative is if you don't have a charge rate. So if this person, for example, earned 10 times that, and then we only had an £80 an hour maximum charge rate, and this person's earning 208, then obviously it's going to give you a massive difference. And then you need to either then correct the salary if it's wrong, or you need to go in and add another standard charge that will cover this person's hourly rate. So you need to obviously just keep an eye on those hourly differences there, that you don't have anything getting way too out of hand. If you've got accurate standard charges, it should be okay. But you can, that's why I put this column in, so that you can double check what's actually going on and how, if you're losing on any of the people. Because then what this does, so for example, we'll get to standard charge next, but this means that two people are now in that £30 standard charge, both Alan and Chris. So, for example, you might have a team of directors, you may have a team of trained individuals or highly skilled individuals or senior consultants and junior consultants or whatever. And then you can lump them all into the same kind of charge rate, which means that when you come to doing a quote, I wouldn't charge out work for Alan and charge out for Chris. I would just charge out X number of hours in the £30 charge rate. And then obviously that covers either of these two staff members. So that's the idea behind it. So let's move on to the standard charges. These are the 10. You can change these at any time. It tallies up how many staff you've got in those charge rates, and it gives you the percentage of staff that you've got in each of the charge rates. If you were to change one of these and you to come back here, it would reassign people into the correct charge rate. Unless you've overridden. If you've overridden and you've removed the override one, then this cell should turn red and you'll be able to come here and change this and put them manually into another one. But otherwise, if you haven't used the overcharge rate, they should all just pop into the correct charge rate as you update these. You've also got your standard profit percentage. So this will, when you actually come to doing a profit percentage, it'll give you the standard profit percentages so that you can add on the various percentages. But you can, as we did with the others on the other sheet, you can override them. So we could in theory charge 4.2% margin. What that would profit percentage. What that would do is it would just take the person, whoever you charge at 4.2, and it'll put them into the 4% category for reporting purposes. So when it reports, it only reports on these 10 percentages. So anyone in between these will get put onto different percentages. So you want to make sure you've got your lowest profit percentage that you're going to add, the highest one that you're going to add, and kind of distribute it in between, in the middle. But you can update these ones as well. These are just the 10 that it shows in the report, and it'll automatically put all the different profit margins based on these values into the correct category, as it were. Overheads, this one's straightforward. This one just needs to know what are your overheads per year. That's it. So you can just list them all. You can put whatever you want in the description column. That's completely up to you, and just put the annual value in. so that this then can look at your expected turnover, it can look at your overheads, and it can work out what percentage that is, so that it knows what to add on later on when you're actually calculating the prices for the project, in order to tell you, in order to get the profit that you say that you want, the correct percentage. So you want to keep this updated at all times, add stuff on if it goes in, if it comes out, you can just select that like that, say clear content, you can resort alphabetically or value or however it is you want to, and then you've got stuff on, keep updating it, make sure this is as up to date as possible. These overheads and then this annual forecast turnover on that sheet on the first tab, intro and setup tab, need to be as accurate as possible at all times to make sure that the values are correct. Then we get to the price calculator, and this is what it's all coming down to. This is where all the mathematics happen, and it works out the different rates. So what you need to do, the date, we put today's date in if you're doing a quote, the date of the price calculation. You can put in the client name, you can put in the project name, and then you can select the profit percentage based on your drop down, your options, or you can just override it and type something in. So here I've typed in 10. So you could, for example, you could type in 5.2%, whatever it might be. The last one here is just to round to. You can round to 1, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100. So that's just rounding these last figures. You might not want to quote a client £1,317.28. So this says just round off the nearest £1, round off the nearest 5, round 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever it might be. So you can round it up. It'll round it up or down depending on whichever one's closest. And that will just round off those numbers. You don't need to use that if you don't want to. And then the last thing to do is literally just fill in that section. Now, we don't need to do the last column because we said we're not using that column. So that's what you need to fill in. And all you need to do is put in how many hours per hourly rate per stage. So these are your default hourly rates. You might not be using all of them. You might only be using 3 different hourly rates, however it is that you've set it up on the other tabs. These little red stars are showing up here because I don't have anybody in the £20 hourly rate. I don't have anyone in the 40, 50, etc. I've only got someone in the 30, 55, and 70. So that's what these little stars are telling me. It's warning me that I don't have personnel assigned to that percentage, to that hourly rate. You shouldn't have that if you've set it up according to your staff and you've got people in each category. But then all you do is you go through and pop in the number of hours per stage. So this is saying that we want to cost him for 4 hours for £40 an hour in stage 2. And if you fill that in, it then gives you the total number of hours required per stage. It gives you the staff cost per stage. It gives you the break-even point per stage. This includes your overheads so that you know what it is you need to be charging as a minimum. That gives you the charge based on that profit. And then this rounds it off to the nearest whatever it is you've asked it to. And that then gives you your price per stage. Now, I've made the next sheet where you've got your quoted projects. So this is where you would list all your projects one below the other. And I'll get to this in a second. But this first section here needs to then be completed with those numbers and percentages and names and dates, etc. So to save you the hassle of retyping it all up again or selecting it, what I've done is I've made this little green box over here. So let's just take out this Mr. X, for example. You see it's red because it's not ready yet. You haven't finished. Only when you've typed in everything that needs to be done and it all looks correct, will this box turn green. And when it does save, you simply copy that, go over to your quoted projects, right click and paste values. Now this is very important. You don't want to paste. If you use paste, it pastes the formatting and it'll ruin the spreadsheet. You want to use paste values. If you've got a Mac or something, it might be under paste special, but you always want to use paste values because that one just pastes the data. It doesn't actually paste all the formatting across. So if we paste the values, as you can see, it now tells me to send a quote. It wants me to send a quote. And this section here, the first bit you wouldn't update unless you specifically want to go and change something. But to be honest with you, if you're going to change any of these numbers, you need to be changing the profit percentage and everything as well. So you don't want to fiddle with that. Once that's in, it's just the section over here that you now use to manage the project. So If I do the quote and I send it off straight away, when I select the date quote, it gives me today's date. I can just select it, and now it goes to active and it starts a countdown towards the follow-up. You can then come back here. You can then select that stuff there, and you can select that. You can say right-click, clear contents, and all of that will disappear. I'm just going to bring it back because I don't necessarily want to disappear. And then it's when it's blank, it's ready for the next quote. And now you've captured those quote details in here, and it's got all of that data of what you've charged per stage. What you might want to do is I toyed with this idea, but I didn't actually keep a record in the spreadsheet of how many hours you said you want to do per stage and what rate it is. So what you could do before you actually do this is you can if you click File and then save a copy, you can actually save this as a PDF. So if you go to File, save a copy, and just change that to PDF, and then go ahead and save. What you can do there is you can save this as a PDF, and you can keep a copy of this PDF so you know how many hours you quoted for each stage for each hourly rate, and you can keep that for the job, because the spreadsheet will not remember how many hours. It just remembers the values that you quoted for each of the stages. So that's something useful that you may actually want to do. But moving along, now you can just go and follow up. So for example, this person here, it's now, we quoted them a while ago, we haven't heard back, so now it says follow up. And when you follow up, you just simply come and select today's date, and then the status changes to active. When you then get a conclusion, let's scroll up and see, I've done a few here. When you get a conclusion, you just select the date, and you've got some options. You can say that either it was accepted or it's been delayed, which means you might want to follow up again later on. It won't warn you to follow up. It takes delayed as being completed, so you'll just have to just monitor the delayed ones. Stale, this is ones that invariably going to happen where the people don't come back to you, and you don't actually know that it's been accepted or whatever. You don't know whether it's been declined or whether it's still active, but you're not getting any feedback, so you mark it as stale. And then declined are those that you hear back from and they say thanks but no thanks. So you can then give the conclusion type, and all of this stuff will be used in the report. So when you mark these two off, the conclusion dates and conclusion type, as anything, it will stop reminding you, it'll stop telling you to follow up, etc. Everything else will be labeled as active. And that's it. This sheet here, I've left you 5,000 rows. If you fill that up, you're going to have to then just come and sort by date and just clear off a whole bunch of the old ones. You might not want to clear it. You might just want to copy it and paste that into another spreadsheet. So you've got that raw data, but you'll have to clear it for the purposes of this spreadsheet. And then you can obviously free up some space. You can just resort by date order to free up some space. The last two sheets, the last two tabs are completely automated. So this one, what this does is it's got a warning here, but that's just because of the matching entries found here, because I've already pasted this data across and I didn't clear it. So let me just remove that now so that it doesn't confuse the issue. So the report's completely automated. What you can do is you can change this 12-month period. So when you scroll down, you can see status for a 12-month period. Well, a lot of these ones are broken down into the different months, like here, September, October, November, and this will update automatically. So it'll include the current month, and it'll keep rolling over on a 12-month basis. So what I've done is, so for example, these are for the status for the 12-month period as well. All this data that I basically included here are all mostly all figures below, there we go, based on the 12-month period. So it takes the last 12 months. So this is always for a year. So if, for example, you have 2 years worth of data in your data set, and you actually say, well, I don't want to see this year, I want to see last year, for example. If you put in any date in the last month of the 12-month period. So for example, if I put in here 1st of January, 2023, then it'll take February 22 to January 23. So whatever date I put in there will be the last month. If you leave that blank, it'll keep rolling over and updating each month, with this month as the current. And then it gives you all sorts of breakdowns here. So it gives you a breakdown based on status, how many projects, what was the average profit margin, etc. So you can see, well, hold on, what declined average profit margin, accepted. You can see where the kind of borderline is. If you're getting ones accepted at a certain margin and declined at a higher margin, you can then see a higher profit. So you can see where to kind of draw the line. This breaks it down a little bit further and actually shows you all the different percentage profits that you've put on the profit percentage tab, and it shows you how many fall into each of those different categories. Now, I've just used random data, so this data is all going to be random, but you should, in theory, start to see a bit of a green pattern and red patches on this heat chart, and you should be able to see at what profit percentage do you start to lose more jobs, in which case you know then what the maximum is that you can be charging. That's the idea behind this table. This just gives you a breakdown based on the number of projects and the total value. So you might see, well, actually, we've only got a few projects outstanding current, but they make up for a large portion because they're all bigger projects. So that's why I did the two, so that you could compare them. This one here, average value per stage per status, that just gives you the average value for each stage. So you can see, well, hold on, stage 3, we tend to be if we're quoting higher on stage 3, we tend to be losing projects or whatever. I'm not sure if this will be completely valuable, but it could give you a very good outlook as to which stage of the project you're actually charging more and which ones are you losing because of that. These two here, number of projects per profit margin per status. So this just gives you a count of the number, and these are all quoted based on the quote date. And it gives you then the value as well, so you can see which months you quoted more and which of the, so you might look and go, well, hang on a second, the number of projects per profit status, when you're quoting, for example, the 4.5%, you might be winning a whole bunch, and 5% you might be losing a whole bunch, in which case you can see, okay, that's the borderline where I should be charging. And it shows the breakdown between the two based on the count or the value on the different profit percentages. Here's you've got monthly. Here you've got the number of projects per month and the value of projects per month. These are based on the quote date. So you might have a 3-month period between when you actually quote and when you actually get the outcome. So these are based on the quote date, and these are based on the conclusion date. So you can see what's happening conclusion-wise in which months based on the number. So all those graphs might be useful to you. These aren't necessarily things that you're going to be looking at every single day, but periodically you're going to want to have a look at that. This is also savable as a PDF. And the last page is the dashboard sheet, and this is just an overview. The stuff down the left-hand side here is showing you alerts. So if you've got any data that's incorrect, so for example, if I went into here and typed in a new person and didn't fill in the required details, when you go to the dashboard, it's going to say here, and the personnel rates their 5 yellow alerts. So those are just kind of alerts to missing or incorrect data. Here you've got the average number of days between quote and accept, and quote to declined, and quote to stale, and quote to delayed. That's just for interest's sake. Number of dates, number of quotes due to be sent, number of follow-ups due, number of staff charged less than their worth, current overhead percentage, etc. And here you've got duplicate client. These are some other warnings: project values not calculated, etc. If any of these flag up, go to the respective tab and sort them out. So these are all just warnings and alerts. There's some key figures for you. These are some interesting how long it takes to get to each stage. This is the table that I explained on the report. It's the same table, and then you've got a few of the graphs that actually come from the report. I've just popped onto the dashboard, so you can see what those are. It's just to give you an overview. So the idea of the dashboard is just to have a quick look on a daily basis, see that there's nothing outstanding, nothing to do, etc., and see a few of the graphs. The report obviously is to go and delve in more detail. As per the report, you can put in any date for the last month, last of the 12-month period for the dashboard, because the dashboard, a lot of this is set to 12-month period, except for these key figures, which aren't limited. You can see there, for example, these are all limited to the 12-month period. So you can set the dashboard to a specific 12-month, and I've made them run independently, so you can change the two and have them different if you want to, rather than have them both exactly the same. So you can decide what to do. So yeah, this dashboard and report automatically generated from this sheet. This sheet gets its data from the price calculator, and the price calculator, and this is where you manage the projects in this section. The price calculator does all the calculations based on these first three tabs. So you've got your overheads, which you keep up to date, intro and setup, annual forecast turnover, which you keep up to date. Those are your drop-down lists. This is where you calculate what each person costs and how much you're going to charge them out at. And this sheet here, standard charge out rates, standard profit percentages, which all then go towards your price calculator. And that's it. I hope that makes sense. I hope that works out properly for you. And I hope that it really, really helps you to get down to the bottom of the figures that you're charging. And as per standard with all the spreadsheets I make, if you look at this and say, well, yep, I want something like this, but this isn't quite right, it doesn't quite do the job, I need it more in depth, or whatever the case might be, do get in touch and have a chat. We can have a chat about a custom version, but this is the standard version. And if this works for you, I wish you all the best with it. Thank you very much and goodbye.